Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of Man to Man 360. I'm your host, Darryl Anderson, and here at the Podcast Summit here in Miami, Florida, I have a special guest. Her name is Nat. Could you introduce yourself to my audience?
Yes. Hello, everybody. I am Nat Martin. I am a transformation coach and professional speaker.
Okay. And what's the name of your podcast?
Resilient Talks.
Okay. And why is it called Resilient Talks?
Well, I have a saying, life is going to life. It's not if, but when. And so everyone has resiliency and everyone activates their resiliency. They just don't know it. So I highlight people telling their resiliency story.
Okay. Now, I know what you're asking. This is Man to Man 360, and you have this woman on your podcast. Well, hold on now. Because resiliency is something that everybody has to deal with, especially men, and especially the young men that we speak to. And I know when we met a little earlier tonight, you talked about the age group or the guys that you sort of want to be able to speak to, or something like that. Can you describe that? Or you work with?
I coached, everything. Yeah. So.
What was that age group?
1739. But even younger, 1739 was the demographics of the age group that I can hire.
Yep.
However, I will probably start speaking to them about 13, 14.
Okay. So she's qualified to have this conversation, yes. All right? And so when we talk about resiliency, first of all, I'm going to dumb it down because I'm going to go down to the lowest common denominator. What does resiliency mean?
Resiliency means your ability to overcome any adversity or obstacle.
Okay. And so there's a lot of obstacles that we all obviously go through, and we talk about this a lot on the show in different areas, but especially young black men and the things that they may be going through, they're going to need resiliency, not excuses, but resiliency. And this is the perfect topic because everybody, I don't care how successful you are, whether you have a degree or none, whether you're married or single, or depending on the age groups and whatnot, you're going to go through something. We just want to make sure that, like our motto in our show is that we expect men, we want to encourage and empower men to make it in life through the power of Jesus Christ. But that's called resiliency. And so let's talk a little bit about that. The age group that I mostly speak to on this show and out in public is in that 28 to about maybe 38 age rate. And there's so much that happens in that age group. You know, they're working. If they're not married yet, they're probably not usually in that age group, not quite for the majority nowadays, but they are in relationships, and they may have been booted out of some bad relationships. They left some relationships, or they got some bad things happen with that. They have to split or whatever. Let's talk about from that perspective how, because I'm sure when you're with these guys, you have to deal with those guys at that time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk to that a little bit.
Well, talking about how I interact with them and how...
Yeah, just how because everyday life gonna happen even at...
Oh yeah, life's gonna life. That's my saying, life's gonna life. One of the key things is with my background. So I am 20-year military retiree. And so with my field of work, about 11 years in my field of work, I was a recruiter manager. So I not only went and had to deal with new applicants joining the United States Air Force, but I also had to supervise and lead my team, who was also can be in those same age groups. And then it's like now I'm putting in the age group, but then I'm also developing them into leaders as well. So it's two perspectives from watching a military mindset to also cultivating them from a civilian mindset into a military mindset.
Well, now that I didn't know this part before, so I want to dive into this if you don't mind. So are you still coaching them after they've been in the military for a little while?
Well, yeah. See, in the military, a lot of people don't understand when you become a supervisor and become a leader in the military, it's a part of your responsibility. So one of the key things is that I develop leaders, and now I'm developing leaders in the civilian sector because we don't just, it's not a job. So when someone go and get a job, they go to work, they go home. In the military, if they say I'm a supervisor or a manager or a leader, guess what? if that young man, if that young man go home and he's having financial problems, he's having family problems, guess who has to deal with it? If he gets in trouble with the law, they call the supervisor.
Gotcha.
And so we picking people up from jail.
Gotcha.
We at the hospital with your family.
Okay.
It's a whole person concept is what we model ourselves after.
Okay.
So I can't have you focused on the mission if you're not focused on the mission.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we do it all.
Perfect person to have this conversation. I'm just backing that up even more so.
Yeah.
So the reason I asked if they're already in the military and you're dealing with them, so is there a possibility that there's some of the, I don't want to diagnose a where they go, PTSD, but there's some traumatic things that they probably have dealt with at this point, and now do you have to deal with that at all?
We have to deal with it before they come in. So again, it's traumatic to just live in America.
True.
To be unfortunate.
True.
2020 was very dramatic for
True.
all Americans.
True.
So when civilians come in, initial applicants come into the military, we are first grooming them to make a transition of their lifetime. It's a transformation that they will forever be changed from, whether they do 4 years, 6 years, or they do a complete 20 years. Now, as they get into the military, depending on their job, depending on the location that they go to, it's going to shift their mindset.
Okay.
So as they start to grow, so we have, like, when they first come in, we have a thing called OJT, on the job training. They come in, I'm baby stepping you.
Gotcha.
So this is how we develop them. Because you came in, we're not going to just put you out there and say, okay, figure that out.
Right.
No, we have to make sure you get on the job training. But that's for the job, but we're also training you how to be a leader. So they're getting on the job training, like, I need you to give a little responsibility. Let's see how they handle that. Maturity's not there yet. Yeah. And most of the time, they might mess up. But that's a learning moment. And I always tell people, you can't get mad and reactive. It's a learning moment. Life, money is on the line when it comes to becoming a leader in the military. And so how we actually cultivate that and groom them, it's very ideal, because someone had told me, I think they was 20, and they were like, man, this is too much responsibility. And it was a guy. He's like, this is too much responsibility. I'm just 20. And I was like, oh. I was like, wow. I said, you just 20?
Just 20.
I'm just 20. I said, man, when I was just 20, I was in Iraq. I was in Baghdad. It was real bombs over Baghdad. I was living in Italy, so I lived in another country, but I was just 20. So I was like, you just 20? Or let's shift the mindset. And it was basically, he was mad at his parents because they were trying to make him responsible. And I was like, yeah, just 20 could be just 20 different for different perspectives of folks. So
good stuff, because you're right. So there is an immaturity. I think personally there's some reasons for that. It's funny because I was just reading a post, a Facebook post by a buddy of mine, literally 24 hours ago. And the post said, it was something like, why is it that when my dad was 13, now his dad has passed away, but his dad would have been like in his 90s at this point. When my dad was 13, he was considered a man, but today, and so there was a long debate and all that, but I got it. I got it, right? There was a time when so much more was given to young men, especially even at 13. And some people say, well, that's too young to be. Well, no, rites of passage. Like whether it be if you're Jewish or I think that the bat mitzvah, I think they call it, whatever, is where it's not that you are a man, but it's that you've now been given the keys to become and the tools to have things given to you to act like a man or to be responsible for things. And so you would never say that I'm only 20 because you're probably driving a tractor at 13, right?
I mean, even with each generation, because again, my son is 16. And so some things he want to do, I was like, I don't know. He's like, Mom, you were 16. You had already left home. And I did. I was living in a whole nother state, going to high school in another state with no family. And I'm like, yeah, but... And he's like, and my dad told me. And I'm like, all right, let's look at the risk factors. Let's just do a risk assessment because you're my only. And I got to make sure. But I was like, you know what? You're right. So some things that he wants to do, I educate him. I always have the safety talk because I am raising a young black king.
That's right.
And so it's like, I need you to understand the safety talk because there's mechanisms in place in me because of the environment I grew up in.
Right.
You grew up in a different environment, so some of them same common mechanisms, they don't kick in.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I need to make sure you understand the safety, and then I let him explore and get his independence. And honestly, it's shocking. So it's like, if you are between that age group, you have to seek out, if you don't know what you're doing, seek out the help, seek out the resources, but don't be afraid to take responsibility because you're not going to really know what you can do until you have to do it.
That's right.
So.
No, that's good because that's exactly it. And so even on our show, one of the things that we say is that, especially if it's a single mom situation, whatever, mom is going to raise you. But what we always say is that there's certain things that, a guy's going to say it's going to be different because we're going to expect you to be able to take certain weights and to take certain risks that might be not necessarily dangerous risks per se, but you're going to have to take those risks. You're going to have to fail. You're going to have to make those mistakes. Just get it out the system. And so if you're in that range, if you are 13,
right.
Somebody's got to do it.
Right.
And at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. Somebody's got to do it, and you understand the risk, like you said, the risk assessment. But once you understand how to use certain things and how to do certain things, and walk in the confidence of what you've learned so far, go ahead and do it.
Right.
Take the risk. Yeah, you might mess it up, but as long as you know no one's going to die as a result of it,
right? No loss of life.
No loss of life. Then do it,
right?
And take that risk, and then you will feel very good at the end, especially as a young man, that, man, I did that. What more can I do? Because what you've done, you've just stretched yourself. You stretch yourself in
resiliency. It's the rubber band. It's the law of the rubber band. If you take a rubber band right now and you was to pull it to be stretched, it's going to bounce back. It's not going to pop. It's not going to break. You are the rubber band, and I want you to stretch yourself so that you can just come back to form. And now every time you stretch, that is your resiliency muscle, and that's what I teach.
We brought it right back.
Yeah.
That was smooth. So let's go back and talk about the podcast and what you do and everything else, and let's bring this back home and how people, first of all, let's also talk about how people can contact you as far as from what you do, the business and the podcast and everything else. Good. Sure.
So on all social media platforms, it's I am Nat Martin. I am Nat N-A-T Martin M-A-R-T-I-N, and then you can go ahead and get the Resilient Talk podcast on Instagram and on YouTube. But that's how you can contact me. I'm on every social media platform. So you type in Nat Martin, I am Nat Martin, she's gonna pop up. She's everywhere.
Yep. This is good. This is good. Hey, listen, this has been a great episode for Man to Man 360. And she's a woman. But what she shared today were golden nuggets, major nuggets. And we didn't even talk too much about this before the recording. And this was huge. So, ladies and gentlemen, well, especially guys, Keyshawn, if you're listening, check this out. And this is great stuff. Thank you. I appreciate you.
No problem.
All right.